angels waging war in the unseen realm. Global events fulfilling biblical prophecy. Eternal life. What lies beyond mortality? From analyzing the paranormal from a biblical worldview to the discussion of cutting-edge science and technology, conspiracy, discovery, special investigative reports. Unafraid to explore the challenging issues facing humanity. Welcome to another edition of SkyWatch TV.
The oldest Christian communities in the world are being destroyed, and the media seem to have just discovered this fact. Where does it end? Welcome to SkyWatch TV. I'm Derek Gilbert, in studio with Tom Horn, and our guest, who has insight based on perspective few of us are privileged to share. He's a retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel, a combatant with experience as a Ranger and an airborne. He's currently a Pentagon strategist and runs a security cooperation course for the U.S. Army War College. He's considered an expert in building capacity and capability in partner militaries. He served as a national security and foreign affairs broadcast analyst for more than 20 years, appeared on all the major television and cable networks, was a Fox News military analyst. In his career, lived and worked overseas, visited war zones, and he's also a writer, columnist, and not afraid to be politically incorrect. His previous book is titled How Cowards Are Pushing Women into Combat. His new book, very timely, Never Submit, Will the Extermination of Christians Get Worse Before It Gets Better? It is our honor to welcome Lieutenant Colonel Bob Maginnis to SkyWatch TV.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. The Christian communities of Syria, Iraq, the Assyrian Christians, Chaldean Christians, some of those communities have been faithful to the Lord Jesus Christ for almost 1,900 years, and they've been destroyed, demolished. Before Saddam Hussein was taken down, there was estimated 1.4 million Christians in Iraq. Now the number is about 250,000. What is happening over there? How did this happen?
Yeah, well, they're not only decimated in terms of the population, but the radicals like the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or al-Sham as it's often called, have gone in and destroyed ancient artifacts, ancient churches just weeks ago. They destroyed a church that had been there from the very first caliph up to the the present time, 1,500 years. Yeah. Radical stuff that they're doing. They're trying to wipe away every trace of Christianity in that entire region. And if they are successful, not only in Syria and Iraq, they're going to do it to the rest of the Middle East, and they'd love to come here as well. That
is a topic. We'll get into that here in just a couple of minutes. I'm just puzzled by this, and I'd like your insight. Why did it take almost 10 years for the major media outlets in the West to pay attention to this?
Well, to a large degree, I would argue the political masters of the United States, and to a certain degree started with President Bush, but certainly during President Obama's term, he said, no, these are people that hijacked Islam. These are people that are an extremist group that have nothing to do with what's going on. He called them the JV team. We're going to go in there, we're going to decimate them with a couple of bombs, and we're going to hire some ex-Syrian rebels, and they're going to destroy them. Well, this failed, totally failed. Here recently, the Inspector General of the Pentagon, started to look at the whole issue of, have we purposely underestimated the seriousness of this threat? And it would appear as if politically the intelligence community was ordered to cut back and to paint it with a rose-colored paintbrush and make it appear as if we're doing better than we aren't. We're doing poorly, and this is like a cancer. It's metastasizing across the entire region. It's even infecting Central Asia as well as North Africa, and of course it's having an impact here at home because of the people we saw in Chattanooga, because of the radicals that are emerging from our own communities. They see the success of these radicals, and they're saying, that's something I want to be part of, and especially if they're a devout Muslim. They believe in the caliphate, and they believe in the order of the caliph, and if they follow those orders, they're going to get something in the hereafter.
Something is different about the Islamic State, because there have been radical Islamic groups in the Middle East for decades. The Islamic State appears to be something new. They declared the caliphate a year ago, June. They don't appear to be interested in any kind of negotiation, collaboration, cooperation. They've even gone so far as to start attacking Hamas in the Gaza Strip because they're not radical enough. What is it that makes the Islamic State so dangerous? What's different about these guys?
Well, first of all, the leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, is a Salafist. He's the most conservative of the Islamic order. He believes in returning the world to the 7th century and, to emulate the Prophet Muhammad. And they're going to take everything that they see in the Sirah, in the Hadiths, and in the Quran, and they're going to apply it to the modern world. Anybody that objects to them, a kafir, an unbeliever, they'll use what they call the takfiri theory, and that is they destroy anybody that doesn't believe as they do. And that theology, that worldview is so radically different from what we've dealt with elsewhere in the region. And it's beginning to affect not only that region, but elsewhere. And that's the real danger, I think, to the West. The West has totally underestimated this. And even the deputy commander of the U.S. Special Forces Command said, look, we don't understand this ideology. Purposely, because the political leaders in the Pentagon and at the National Security Council have turned a blind eye to this, and they said, you will not discuss what this ideology is because it's center of mass, Islam. It's true Islam.
In other words, they've not hijacked Islam. They're in their mind, they're going back and actually practicing it the way Muhammad wanted it.
They're the most faithful. They're doing what Muhammad did in Medina and Mecca, back in the 7th century. That's what al-Baghdadi has said from the very beginning when he took over in 2010. He said, we're going to take back and establish a caliphate, and we're going to take back the world in the name of Muhammad, what he did. He set the example, and we're going to emulate that.
Let me jump in here and ask you a question, Colonel Maginnis. The subtitle of your book, Will the Extermination of Christians Get Worse Before It Gets Better? And I'd like to know, what is your opinion about that rhetorical question, but as well, if it is going to get worse, is it, and this is touchy here, but is it partly because of our own administrative policies regarding what Islam is, who the Muslims are, what the danger is? And then I want to ask you about this whole Iran deal, and is it connected?
Well, yes, Tom, I think it will get worse because in place, this administration, President Obama and his people have established a policy. If you just go across, look what we did in Egypt. Egypt was turned over to the Muslim Brotherhood, which are basically Salafist, and they tried to exterminate a lot of Coptic Christians. Now, President al-Sisi, who was taken back over, has pushed back somewhat. But you have chaos in the Sinai. You have chaos in Cairo. That country it could become another Syria if we're not careful. Look at next door, it's Libya. Libya is a failed state. We can't do anything there. Of course, President Obama was directly involved in starting the campaign to bomb Libya, to get rid of Omar Gaddafi. And unfortunately, that country today, years later, is worse off than it's ever been. It was somewhat cooperating with us back before we went in there. Then you look at Syria. Our Secretary of State, who was a senator, Kerry at the time, went in there right after the Obama administration took over, and he said, well, we can work with this guy Assad. Well, it didn't work out all that well because we held back, just like Hillary Clinton held back, when she took over as Secretary of State. They held back, and that became to metastasize. The Islamist group grew up, and they started to push back. And as a result, you ended up in a civil war that has now cost hundreds of thousands of lives and run most Christians out of that region, to include those that aren't strict Islamists like ISIS. Turkey is ruled by Erdogan. Erdogan is an Islamist. He won't allow Christians to even cross into his country. Look at Iraq. Iraq was, we did a pretty good job in 7 and 8 and 9, through the surge that Dave Petraeus led. But unfortunately, when we left in December of 11 by choice, because Obama failed to negotiate a proper status of forces agreement, that we left. And that army went back to the old corrupt ways, and I've been to Iraq a number of times. They went to the old corrupt ways. They decimated the will to fight, and we saw what happened in June of 14. chased them all out of, ISIS chased all the Iraqi forces out of Mosul. They chased them out of Ramadi. They chased them out of Fallujah. They're beckoning on the doorstep of Baghdad. You can go across the entire region. It is a cataclysmic failure across the entire region, to include Central Asia and North Africa. The Obama administration I point a finger clearly at them, and I think most people that have studied this, and I've been working on this issue for almost 50 years. And my first published article was in August of '73 on what would happen in that region geopolitically. And unfortunately, we've seen some pretty sad things happen, and it's going to get worse, I'm afraid.
Well, and so just to follow up with the question about Iran, because a lot of what you're talking about is failed policy after failed policy. We're tying our hands. But, and I know you have to be really careful with your connection with the Pentagon about what you say, and when it's your matter of opinion, or when it might be the matter of a lot of other people in our intelligence community's opinion. But is there a shared belief that we're going to not only have we made mistakes, we're going to continue making them, and the biggest one we might be making right now is this deal with Iran that is on the table?
Well, there's no question that Iran has in the past at Parchin, which is their military test facility, and throughout this summer, we've watched through satellite imagery reported in the open press that they've continued to do some movement around there and some limited construction. We knew they work on triggering mechanisms on nuclear weapons. We knew they worked on nose cones for ballistic missiles that could hold nuclear weapons. We know they have all sorts of enrichment. Everything that Obama promised 6 months ago, has been violated. He was going to shut down their nuclear program. He was going to inspect on will everything they were doing. The list, there were about 12 of them. Every single one was wiped off the table on the 15th of July when the president announced the deal with Iran. Iran, is very good at negotiating. If you go to the table with Iran, you're going to lose because the Persians have 5,000 years of experience.
And we're finding out from some of the secret deals that we, the American people, aren't supposed to know about, according to Secretary Kerry, that the International Atomic Energy Agency has granted the Iranians the power, the right to go ahead and inspect their own military facility. Looking beyond the nuclear deal and Iran's role in the geopolitical quagmire of the Middle East, what role are they playing in the extermination of the Christian communities there?
Well, the Iranians, of course, have recognized the right of certain groups of Christians to exist. However, if you have, quote, an illegal Christian evangelical or whatever Christian church meeting in a home, you're subject to a knock on the door, and the special interior people will come in and arrest you and disband, put you in jail. And there is an underground church that has done very, very well in Iran. But they have to stay underground because anytime they put their head above ground, it gets chopped off by the administration there. Clearly the leadership of Ali Khomeini, backed up by the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps and a Quds force and so forth. These are the power centers. They're the people behind the nuclear program. They're the people around the oppression of any dissent. I can remember this was 6-7 years ago, I went to a very senior Bush administration official, and I said, part of the answer is we have to seed an insurgency in Iran amongst the dissidents and then undercut the Islamic Republic, the leadership by the radical Ali Khomeini. This man laughed me and another person who is fairly well known out of his office. And yet, subsequent to that in 2009, we had a revolution of sorts after the presidential election. What happened? They were oppressive. They went in, they killed people, they put them in jail, and nothing has been heard since. A failed opportunity. Another example of the Obama administration's naive, misguided decisions on foreign policy that is costing a lot of lives, not only of Christians in that country, but of others. And that's the sort of thing we're faced today. Even if we got the best president the next president was super on all these issues. It's going to take years, if not decades, to reverse the damage done here in the last couple of decade at least.
Yeah, and I think there was a strong signal sent that when the Obama administration reached this deal, they didn't bother to mention the 3 American citizens who are being held in Iran. That was not part of the negotiations
not at all.
Looking at the genocide of the Christians in Syria, Iraq, they're crying out for help.
Absolutely.
What are the implications geopolitically for the Middle East of the elimination of the Christian communities there, and specifically, by extension, what are the implications for Christians here in America?
Well, yeah, I wrote in the book about a host of things that Christians have done in that part of the world for millennia. Look at the medical programs. Look at the care for the local citizens. Look at the participation in government, that the Christian values are inculcated. For the most part, Christians in countries like Iraq and Syria were welcomed additions. They cooperated with the government because that's what they're called to do in Romans. But unfortunately, as now they've been taken over by Islamists who have no tolerance for anyone that doesn't adhere to their strict interpretation of their doctrine, then they're being run off. Now, where are they going? Many are dying. Many are trying to get to the West. Not very many, because the prejudice is for the Muslims escaping. But if we don't contain this cancer, this is a true cancer, and it's been allowed to metastasize for some time, it is already beginning to spread in Western Europe. You look at Western Europe, it's like if you like a Dalmatian dog, you little circles. You have these little ghettos of no-go zones throughout Western Europe where you have Muslim control, where local police don't go in, they don't speak the language, they don't embrace the culture, they failed totally to integrate. And as a result, you find that, like the incident we saw not long ago on the train there, the French train, Moroccan Islamist goes in there with the intention of killing as many people as they can. And of course, we have other incidents all over Western Europe. That is coming to America, and it's coming to America very quickly, because we have weak leadership here to deal with this sort of threat.
Is it also connected to current immigration policy? From what I understand, you said a moment ago very quickly that the Muslims that are trying to also escape some of those areas are giving preference for immigration into the United States. I've been listening to the Glenn Beck program. You and I talked about this before we came on the set, that there are Christians right now whose lives are under threat. Many of their relatives have already been killed. Their communities have been wiped out. They're trying to get out of the country, and they can immigrate. It sounds like Mexico might open the border for them. In Europe, there's other places that are opening their borders for them, but not the United States. They're being told they can't enter. Is that true?
It is true. And if you look at the State Department, a policy, they depend upon a UN agency to vet all these immigrants. And the UN is only vetting and allowing, to be passed on a list of mostly Muslims. If you go in and you talk to our people at the embassies in some of the Middle Eastern countries, the embassies are turning away people that are self-identified Christians or former Muslims that have converted to Christianity, because those are the people that are most at risk, because usually they have a death warrant on their heads from their own families because they converted. So yes, that is a bias that this administration has introduced that is totally favoring to Muslims. And of course, you can take it by extension that that's what they want to do. They want to plant as many Muslims in our own population that will fail to integrate, and they want to keep out the Christians.
So that the issues in Europe are coming here next.
Absolutely. You look at Deerfield, Michigan. You look at a number of communities around the U.S. We already have some of those that are self-evident.
Are terrorists here? Is ISIS, does it have, I saw an article where they said we wear the same kind of clothes they do. They don't even know we're there.
Well, my son-in-law is a policeman where I live. And he's actually gone into a home where there was ISIS flags, and the son who had left the country, was helping people get into Syria. There was an ISIS.
Do you worry that does the Pentagon worry that another 911 is already in the plan?
Well, 911 was unique, or certainly a catastrophic event. There's no question that many of these radicals spend 30 hours a day trying to figure out how they can kill us. And if they can kill us with an AK-47 on a train, they will. If they can blow up a bomb at a local mall, if we give them the opportunity, there's no question in my mind, absolutely none, that they will do just that.
And I want to ask you one other quick question. I'm sorry here, I'm kind of dominating these
That's
questions.
Right. This is fascinating stuff. So
but it's kind of a little bit of a switch in the conversation, yet it's not. The entire LBGT agenda, the recent Scottish ruling, do you see persecution of Christians also coming as a result of that kind of social policy?
Well, there's no question. Because I have a long history with
in fact, you worked under Rumsfeld working on the Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Well, it was actually before Rumsfeld. Back in '93 when we wrote Don't Ask, Don't Tell, I was part of the advisory committee that put that together, and of course subsequently worked at the Family Research Council and worked in the courts against this radical agenda. I told, because I wrote the analysis, told the Congress that this is what's going to happen, and it happened exactly like I said. Their agenda is not just to get to serve. Their agenda is homosexual marriage. Their agenda is to force us to say the right things, even to think the right things. And
so it's totalitarianism is what you're really saying.
It's fascism as far as I'm concerned. And we saw the same thing on other issues. Now the Islamic issue is beginning to show the same indications, and certainly in the plan that I outline, a campaign plan here, we talk about what it's doing to communities, what churches ought to be doing. We talk about what it's doing to our youth. We talk about what it's doing to our media, etc. These are venues that Americans have got to wake up, because it's like the proverbial frog in the frying pan. The heat's up. It's already very hot, and soon we're going to be boiled, and we're not going to even know what happened to us.
Well, and then I'll shut up. But one of the things I really appreciated about your book was it doesn't just say what the issues are, what the problems are, but there really is a comprehensive plan in here on how to turn the curve and start repairing the damage that's been done.
Well, in fact, I took, when I wrote this, you see, I teach campaign planning for the United States Army, and I've done this for years. So I actually understand something about campaign planning. And so I put together 4 chapters in an entire section and said, this is a comprehensive campaign. We talk about raising up leaders, the type of leaders that we need to counter this stuff. And it's going to be tough. The William Wilberforces, the Dietrich Bonhoeffers, even the Martin Luther Kings of the world. We need people that see the moral issue that's at stake here. Then we also need people that are going to engage the political process. You've got presidential candidates running around. What do they think about these issues?
Right.
They need to be answerable to the American people. They want to get elected. And then, of course, I talk about the communities. What does the local school teach about the history of the Middle East, about Islam? The Saudis, interestingly, they fund a lot of the curriculum going to college campuses today. And what do you think that says? It is a very biased curriculum that favors a very distorted view of Islam.
What do you hope that readers will take away from Never Submit?
Well, one, I want pastors to read it. I want pastors to understand they have a moral obligation, a biblical obligation to not only understand what their congregants are faced with in the everyday life. When was the last time I heard, or you heard, a pastor talk about these tough issues? These are moral issues. The same thing the Nazis did over in Germany. What is it? 7% of the Germans were Nazis. The rest of them weren't, but yet they killed 6 million Jews. How did that happen? It doesn't take very many people to get involved. We need Christians involved. We need school teachers involved. We need youth leaders involved here. We need people involved in the political process, because the political process, every congressman is going to vote on something that's related to this. We need to hold our media accountable. And of course, we have to get our federal government. Our Defense Department has a very clear agenda in here. The State Department has a clear agenda. Those appointed ambassadors and the embassies ought to be asking the Saudi Arabian king, why are you persecuting our Christians? Why don't you allow a Christian to worship in your country? Why can't they bring a Bible? Why can't they even wear a cross in your country? You expect us to respect you? Well, then you better start respecting Christians.
The only person that I've heard among the political candidates even mention this has been Donald Trump so far. And I don't think it's a surprise that as of the most recent poll, he's at about 40% and more than double the nearest Republican rival. Think what you will about him as a candidate and the quality of a candidate or a potential president. He's at least addressing the issue, and it's resonating with the American people.
Well, he is. And Americans are angry. They're angry about a host of issues, certainly the immigration issue, and this is part of the immigration issue. Mm-hmm. It's also part when we self-identify in this country, based upon polling from Pew and others, at least 70% of Americans self-identify as Christians. Yeah. This is about the destruction of an entire group of people. We self-identify as Christians in a region, and not only do they want to destroy all them in the Middle East, they want to come here and do it to us. This is life and death stuff. And if we don't get serious about it, some bad things are going to happen in the not so distant future.
And with just about a minute to go, how grave, how serious is that threat?
Well,
are we talking an existential threat to our way of life?
There's no question. It's existential. It's existential to every Christian in terms of what they say, what they think, and also physically, because these people want to kill us. They're spending all their time thinking about how to kill us, and they're planning them in our own communities. They want to distort our children's thinking. They want to destroy our churches. They want to stop us from talking about Jesus Christ. This is very, very serious, and that's why people have to get serious about it.
We'll have to talk further about this title specifically, Never Submit. It is the latest book from Lieutenant Colonel Bob Maginnis, Never Submit. Will the extermination of Christians get worse before it gets better? Available from SkyWatch TV and the SkyWatch TV store, skywatchtvstore.com. We'd like to offer this book to you for the list price, $20, but as a bonus, we'll add a book about the coming war between Christians and Christians. It's difficult to resist the onslaught of radical Islam when we as Christians have basically set up a firing squad that's circular and we're all aiming into the middle. Blood on the Altar, a host of authors, including some guy named Derek Gilbert. Part of this will be included in the package when you order Never Submit from Lieutenant Colonel Bob Maginnis. SkyWatch TV, skywatchtvstore.com. Yours for just $20 plus shipping and handling. Colonel, with just maybe half a minute to go, one final thought perhaps that you would like to leave viewers with.
Our country is at a crossroads. You see it in the presidential campaigns and the debates. This is an existential threat to our very existence. We started off as a Christian country. Our founders were predominantly Christian men and women. And yet today, that very foundation is very rocky. And if we don't do something as a nation, as a people, as a church, as a body of Christ, that could all be wiped away.
Thank you for sounding the alarm. Colonel,
thank you.
An honor.
Appreciate it.
We thank you for watching as we keep watch. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is SkyWatch TV. The supernatural realm is real, and we humans are naturally curious about it. That's why there are so many television reality shows featuring ghost hunters and alien chasers and mediums and psychics. Well, by and large, the Christian church avoids these controversial topics, even though we have the authoritative book on the subject. That's our mission at SkyWatch TV, is to address issues of the paranormal and the supernatural from a Christian, a biblical perspective. But we depend on your support to do it. To find out how you can support SkyWatch TV prayerfully and financially, please log on to our website, skywatchtv.com. And keep watching as we keep watch at SkyWatch TV.